So please welcome Brandon George.
Good morning, how's everybody doing? Matt yesterday, he goes, hey, I think I forgot to get your Bible. Will you please send it over to me? And I was in the car, so I couldn't adjust it, and so I sent him over the Bible, and I said, hey, here's the cool thing, but do not, absolutely do not, read the full thing. So, thank you very much for the warm welcome. I am excited to be here today. I really mean that. Fairbanks holds a special place in my heart, personally, and it has professionally as well now for a couple of years. I'm excited anytime I get to be in the room with a whole bunch of passionate people. Passionate about helping people with addiction, passionate about their communities, and passionate about moving Indiana forward when it comes to the issues that we face today. I am really, I love my position. I love what I get to do because it varies on a day-to-day basis, and I need that in my life. So, Indiana Addictions Issues Coalition, at its core, is an advocacy group. That's what we do. That's what we're founded to do. But advocacy takes a lot of shapes and forms. So some days, what that looks like is me standing out in the community, screaming and yelling about addiction being a chronic disease, not a moral failing. Other days, that's me standing in a room full of stakeholders saying that we say it's a chronic disease, but we don't treat it that way. We still treat it like an acute care issue. Other days, it's talking to sheriffs or law enforcement about how we begin to stop treating this as a criminal issue and really start treating it as a healthcare issue. And some days, that's talking to our legislative body about making sure that the things that are being passed are recovery friendly. They are taking us, our people, our communities into consideration when decisions are being made. So, I got a couple things I want to start off with. My goal, what I talked to Matt about, is I wanted to talk a little bit, or not I wanted to, we decided it'd be best if I talked a little bit about what was going on across the country with addictions, federally, in our state, some things that are coming down the pipe, both programming-wise, legislatively. One thing that we don't do well, and I don't think the addictions industry as a whole, and whether that's treatment or the recovery movement, is we don't communicate well. We don't have a solid infrastructure for communicating information. Unfortunately, addiction care has been siloed off from general health care for a really long time. And so I've got a couple really bright spots, like the place where we're standing today over the last couple decades. But everything else has really been piecemeal and disjointed. So I think it's important that we effectively get out information. A couple of things that people always tell me what they want to know when I'm in communities is, one, what's other people doing? And two, where do I get funding from? And so those should be things that are readily available to any organization, that are readily available to any person that wants them. So the best news possibly of the day, I'll start out with, a couple of days ago, CDC released their preliminary results on overdose deaths for 2018. And excited would be a strong word, but we got some good news. It looks like the overdose deaths have plateaued out. They actually dropped by about 5%, so we went from 72,000 to about 68,500. So that's good news. It's the first time it's dropped since all of this began for years and years and years. That being said, is 68,000 deaths a year from overdose an acceptable number? Absolutely not even close. So I say that to say some of the stuff we're doing is working. Getting naloxone into the hands of people in the community, first responders, hospitals, moms, people that are still using is helping save lives. The education we're doing is helping save lives. The expansion of education is helping save lives. So I think our interventions are working. We just need to do more of them. Over the last fiscal year, $11 billion was spent on addiction-specific stuff. So in 2017, that was like $3.3 billion, and in 2018, that rose by like 140% up to $7.4 billion. And that sounds like a lot of money, but I think that the HIV crisis took it somewhere between 80 and $100 billion to really make a big turn on. So in comparison, that's where things have been at. I was really excited. Everything is so politically charged now, and everybody drifts off into their corners. That it's hard to verify and get some of our own information. So I automatically assume the worst in a lot of situations. And that's not the appropriate thing to do. The appropriate thing to do is do your own research and make sure the information you have is good. So I was in DC in June, and I was with the director of the Office of National Drug Control and Policy, the president's group that deals with addiction, essentially. And Director Carroll laid out the budget for the upcoming fiscal cycle. And there is $30 billion earmarked for addictions for the next fiscal cycle from the President's Office of National Drug Control Policy. So that's fabulous news. Now, I don't know if that's going to stay there once it gets through Congress and gets approved, but that's the starting mark. And so I think that's a good sign of, yes, we're seeing overdose go down a little bit, but now is not the time to let up. Now is the time to redouble our efforts and keep things moving forward. A couple things that are going on federally that I think that are somewhat new, are things that we can be on the lookout for. Something that was certainly new for me. Last year, I started doing some work with Indiana University School of Medicine. And so we get together, we're in a room. There's a whole bunch of experts from different areas. You're actually going to hear from some of them today. Dr. Cyrus is going to be one of them. So we have a clinical psychologist, we've got a addiction psychiatrist, there's a clinical pharmacist, we've got all these different areas getting ready to help train physicians about treatment, recovery, medication, and there was an attorney in the room. And I couldn't figure out why this attorney was in the room. I assumed it was probably for compliance or something like that. I figured, it's like IAIC School of Medicine, but I probably want to make sure everything's done right. And so I didn't give it too much thought. We started on, we did a couple of training sessions. And then it became glaringly apparent that the attorney was actually there advocating on behalf of the client. When we were talking about the issues of transportation, the client had, the attorney said, have they got a hearing with the judge to try to get his license changed? As he tried to go and file a motion to get the child support license suspension lifted. See, I thought these issues were like people just being bad with money, people not being able to drive well. What I didn't realize is that these are civil legal issues. When I think about law, I always think about criminal issues. I always think about, how substance use disorder is criminalized and people go to jail and have criminal consequences, and that's true. But a lot of people have a lot of civil responsibilities that lay with them. And so the way that this has taken form previously over the last handful of years, it's still rather new, is what they call medical legal partnerships. So what that is hospitals will often have an attorney as part of the treatment team. So when these issues pop up, they have an attorney there to provide guidance. They can help with debt consolidation. So think about this. Somebody gets out of jail. They've been in jail for 30 days, 60 days. They've lost their job. They don't have a license. They get a job finally. The recovery's going okay. They get their first paycheck. They're expecting, I don't know, $300. They get a check for $120. It's not even enough to cover the rent of their halfway house or gas or extras for the week. What had happened is the person had a garnishment placed against them that they didn't know about. And as we know in early recovery, things are fragile. Hope is a key ingredient in recovery. And so not overlooking these types of things, not overlooking clients that have these issues that can set them back, these barriers for them to earn good things are really, really important. And so in medical legal partnerships, we can put them in the hospital. The problem is, do we treat addictions in our hospitals mainly? No, of course not. It's siloed off. It's in different places, so we can't use that model. So what we've tried to start doing around the country. Legal Services Corporation, they've got law firms in every district across the entire country. Spent the last year putting together a report to train attorneys all over the country at their legal firms of how to connect with recovery organizations, how to connect with recovery residences, how to connect with recovery providers, recovery community organizations, so that they can spend a day a week, 4 hours a week, something, one day a week for a couple hours where clients can come in and get some of these civil legal needs met. I had no idea that a judge with the swipe of a pen could change a suspended license. I didn't know that. 10-year suspension, you can go in after 5 years. Show that you've been in treatment, show that you've turned your life around, and a judge can actually change that on the spot. So that's just one example of how that can help change somebody's life. Another thing that I'm really excited about is the increase in addiction fellowships. So normally doctors, you go through med school, you have a residency, and then you need additional specialty training, you have a fellowship. So like for gastro, there's like 1,000 of them across the country. And that's typical of a lot of medical conditions. And you guys have probably seen this if you've been to a hospital. Somebody has a heart attack or a medical issue. When the doctor shows up, he's got a team with him. He's got multiple people, he's training people, he's letting other people lead the way, they're learning, they're doing stuff. That's how training and on-the-job stuff works. We can't even hardly get an addiction specialist to somebody in the hospital. More or less have a team of people that are actually learning from them on the spot. And so until we put things in place that increase those, we're going to be chasing our tail a little bit. So I'm excited the American Academy, or Legion Academy of Addictions is working to do this. We've got 77 addiction fellowships across the country. There's been at the White House with the National Institute of Drug Abuse, Health and Human Services, the other government agencies, with hospital systems and medical schools, trying to figure out a way to expand these. And so that event produced 22 more addiction fellowships. So in one event we went from 77 up to 99. The hope is those will be start being implemented sometime within the next year. These are the beginning steps, so that years down the road we'll be able to correct some of these shortages that we have. I was in northern Indiana, and they had one addiction psychiatrist in the whole area of the state they could access, and that's just not acceptable. Naloxone, we all talk about getting into the hands of people. I'm sure most of you are aware we've got a standing order in Indiana, so you can just go into the pharmacy. Does everybody know that? Okay, it's important to know if not. You don't have to have a prescription for naloxone. You can walk into any pharmacy and you can ask for it and get it. It's going to cost you money. You've got insurance, you have your doctor write a script, and that'll help so you can file it. The FDA is working right now to fast track over-the-counter for naloxone. Apparently it's a long process. You have to submit labels. Apparently labels are a big deal. Like they got to do big test things to make sure that somebody can read the label that's completely naive and administer the medication. So they're fast tracking that. That should be something that happens pretty soon. Some of the state efforts, federally, some of the advocacy efforts that are taking place. The X waiver. How many people in here are familiar with the X waiver? Not very many. So physicians who prescribe buprenorphine have to have special training. So it is a very safe medication to prescribe, way safer than a lot of things that they prescribe. But for some reason, they put an extra hurdle in making it so that doctors can prescribe this. They can prescribe all the dangerous stuff with no extra training, but it doesn't. When you examine this, it just makes zero sense. You've got one of the safer medications that you can't prescribe, and so there's a big advocacy effort right now to X the X waiver is what we're calling it. And so if you hear about that, please make some noise about it. Like I said, it just doesn't make any sense. If you want to increase education around addictions or prescribing of opiates, let's do that. But you're putting extra hippers on the solution. Let's focus on the problem and restricting that. So some state efforts going on. An area that I care deeply about is jails and our criminal justice population. Excited that the Attorney General, Curtis Hill, is working on helping get some therapeutic communities and jails around the state. There's about a half dozen of them right now. The governor's office, with the newest budget, allocated $3 million over the next 2 years to getting people addictions treatment in jail. And I mean treatment, not programming. Not somebody going in with life skills or just doing basic stuff. I'm talking about actual treatment inside facilities. So that's a big deal. It's hard to get anything inside of jails, and the stuff that we usually do get is substandard. Just talked a little about it a little bit ago. Indiana University School of Medicine has Project Echo. If you are not familiar with it, it is a training module where you do video trainings. IU has a group of people together, a group of experts that help train. They've got multiple tracks, one for physicians, one for clinicians, one for community health workers. Help train about medication, different styles, implementation, a variety of topics, one of which I'm guessing Melissa's going to probably talk a little bit about a little bit. And then some new best practices around naloxone. We talked about what's happening federally with the FDA trying to make it over the counter. But now in the infrastructure, they're getting naloxone to all the health departments for free. If you need naloxone, you should be able to contact your health department. We're also working with jails, trying to get naloxone to people on the way out of jails. And anybody that gets an opiate prescription, especially if it's buprenorphine or methadone, every single person that has one of those prescriptions should have to pay naloxone. Not because we think they're going to use it again, because most likely they're hanging around high-risk demographics, other people that are using, family members, friends, things like that. So as much as it was important to get our first responders to have naloxone, are they really truly the first responders in these situations? No. It's friends, it's family, it's people in the household. So that's an important thing. Policy-wise, a couple of quick things to touch on that will be relevant to the people in this room. So House Bill 1175 passed. It was about Medicaid reimbursement. And the reason that it applies is a lot of people will not become Medicaid reimbursable because of the red tape that goes along with it. They have to pay a physician to come in and review their charts. There's not a lot of physicians that can do it, so it costs a ton of money. And the physicians usually, early in my experience, and I ran a treatment facility, they're not reviewing the charts. They come in, there's a room, there's a stack of files, they come in, they sign each file, and they talk to somebody for a half hour, 45 minutes about all of them, and they're not involved really in treatment planning. And so it was just an extra step that prevented more people from being Medicaid reimbursable, and also was putting a hamper on a shortage of physicians that we don't have already. So this bill changes it so that licensed clinical behavioral health professionals can oversee and create treatment plans. So licensed clinical social workers, licensed clinical mental health the law went into effect July 1, but it has not been implemented yet. The state's still working out how to do it. There has to get approval from Health and Human Services. But ultimately, the hope is now people that haven't been willing to become Medicaid reimbursable because of I can't find a doctor, it doesn't make sense financially for me to pay one a lot of money, will now be able to do it. Senate Bill 141, the OBOT legislation. OBOT is a term we use to refer to opioid-based opioid treatment providers. Essentially, it's places that prescribe buprenorphine. Some of the I don't want to say clinics, the organizations that do so, there is no regulation on it. I'm an advocate, so I want more people prescribing, but I'm also not so far out there that I don't realize that there's some bad actors out there that are just, that they don't have the best intentions at hand. There's a good middle ground. At first, the Attorney General wanted everybody that prescribed to essentially be like an OTP, where they had to be daily dosing, all kinds of stuff that would have fractured the whole system. It wouldn't have worked. I was grateful that bill, the year before, did not get a hearing. In this bill, they got ASAM, the American Society of Addiction Medicine, the governor's office to the table, and they came up with something that worked. So essentially, the bill requires providers to follow ASAM standards, which are really, really basic. Anybody that has been through the X-waiver training, if they're following that, they'll meet those standards. And then Senate Bill 33, one that we're really excited about, one that at the very least is going to make it so that there's a couple comprehensive addiction recovery centers across the state. One north, one central, one south. At minimum, if that just happens, if we have a place similar to the place that we're standing in right now, it provides a full array of services from detox, IOP, PhD, recovery residences, recovery coaching, everything. If we have a couple of those around the state, if just that happens, it'll be a win. But the hope is that this new legislation, what happened is the Division of Mental Health and Addictions they created a new certification for these. And the hope is that this will become the gold standard for care. And whether they get the grant to do this, because there's a couple of grants out for it, or not, we hope that organizations aspire to get the certification. The type of services you get shouldn't be determined by the door you walk in or where you live at geographically. You know, just because you live in a small town, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to get quality care. And unfortunately, most places, you know, you shouldn't be able to walk into a place and say, we don't believe in insulin. We don't believe in medication. We need to have a full spectrum of care. So Senate Bill 33 we're excited about. The recovery efforts around the state, I want to talk about briefly. And normally I can do this like in 30 seconds. But there's a lot of recovery stuff going on, so it's going to take just a little bit longer, which is a great thing, right? So recovery residences. We've got a little bit over 100 of them certified in the state right now. The state teamed up with Oxford Houses, which help out with recovery residences all over the country, to bring 42 recovery residences to Indiana over the next 2 years. So if your community is lacking one, talk to me afterwards. I'll hook you up with Oxford House, see if they can come out and get one into your community. The implementation of recovery resource centers. PACE, which is a reentry organization, opened a peer recovery center. There's 2 recovery cafes. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that model, but they are community centers that are recovery focused. They have non-denominational recovery meetings. So it doesn't matter if you're a 12-step person or a Celebrate Recovery person or whatever. It's a healthy place for people to go. Oftentimes we get back from treatment, we get back from jail, we get back to our home. We wake up the next day, we walk out the door in our community, we don't have anywhere safe to go. So these will help with that. Ross training, the governor-funded 10 coalitions around the state. There's a couple of them in the room right now. I know Instep's here. I think I saw somebody from PSAP earlier. And one of the things that we're working on, the Indiana Recovery Network, which I can chat about afterwards. But the goal of the Indiana Recovery Network is to build that infrastructure I was talking about earlier. We've got recovery-related things all over the state, but nothing to connect them all. And the Indiana Recovery Network will serve as a hub and a resource for people to connect. A place that is a cache of information. So if you're a recovery resident or if you want to start a recovery community organization in your community, this is the place that you can go. There's a digital platform where you can go and work with people from other communities and learn the information that you need, see some white papers, some ways to go about stuff. The front end of it also has resources. It's broke down into 4 areas: health, home, community, and purpose. Areas that we work on for people's recovery capital, right? Build the recovery capital. And health can be anything from pre-recovery, syringe services, make sure people don't get disease, all the way to medication or treatment providers. Home speaks for itself. Purpose, education, employment opportunities, and then community. All these recovery community organizations that are popping up, 12-step groups, faith-based groups, that kind of thing. The thing I'm most excited about, and probably this is being a person in recovery, is a new project that the Indiana Recovery Council launched just last week, 10 days ago. So the Indiana Recovery Council is a group of consumers around the state that give recommendations back to the Division of Mental Health and Addiction on what's needed in the communities. They do surveys, they talk to people, and it's not just substance use disorder, it's mental health. And so when they needed to do the stigma reduction campaign, the OFACs, that was born out of the Indiana Recovery Council. And that's a good campaign, but it's focused just on opioids. We all know that opioids is just one small piece of the puzzle, so we redoubled our efforts and started the Do You Speak Stigma campaign. And I want to show a couple things for our kickoff.
You wrote me off, like I was beyond help, is how I internalized that. And it definitely stuck with me, where I was, you wrote me. Like I was beyond help, is how I internalized that. And it definitely stuck with me, where I was thinking about or even considering seeking help in the future. I started taking pain pills and Xanax every day before school. At age 17, I was taking morphine every day. And I've been to rehab 7 times. You know, one time I went into an emergency room, maybe for not the best of reasons. You know, I wasn't necessarily ill or anything. I was pain pill seeking, and the doctor caught on to that, fair enough, rightfully so. But instead of offering me those resources, he was very distinct and said, "He's just a drug addict. He'll be back next week. We'll deal with him then." I remember it was like my heart sinking to my stomach. This is what people think of me now. You know, this is what I've become. I really internalized that. If a doctor's going to say that who essentially fixes and cures diseases, then how am I going to get help? If the doctor's kind of written me off. It opened my eyes to how just using those terms kind of do perpetuate that stigma. It is just another mental health disorder, and with appropriate resources and treatment, it can be in remission, if you will. I just celebrated 2 years on April 25th, got involved in the community, became a recovery coach, and I just want to be that person, like my sponsor was there for me. I realize stigma is something hard to overcome, but find someone you trust and love, like a recovery coach, someone else in recovery, some type of recovery meeting. Those people understand, and they will help get you the resources and pathways that you're seeking, one day at a time.
When a person with a disease like mental illness or substance use disorder hear the negative labels that others call them, they leave a mark. Words matter, and what we say and do can stop people in need from seeking help. Now's your chance to change lives for the better. Visit stigmaneverhelps.com to find out how.
So, Jeff Nance, where you at in the room? Hold your hand up, Jeff. So Jeff is the project manager for the Indiana Recovery Council's Do You Speak Stigma campaign. We're going to be out at conferences around the state this year. We're going to have speakers. If you, somebody you know that's in recovery from either mental health or substance use disorder and experience stigma, and you want to participate, please go see Jeff downstairs.
Just had a quick question. Do you have any PSAs for specifically for teenagers for adolescents?
Not for adolescents. There's a whole, I'll talk to you afterwards. There is some, there's somebody that does it. It's just not necessarily with this one specifically. So the resources are there. I just need to get them to you. And so if anybody's engaged or wants to be involved in this, talk to Jeff afterwards. I appreciate the time this morning. This is the first time I've tried to pull all of this information together, and it's an enormous amount, especially when you're talking about all the initiatives around the country, both policy-wise and operationally. So I'm going to be hanging out for a while. If anybody wants any details on any of the things I talked about afterwards, I'm more than happy to give a few more details about it. I appreciate each and every one of you. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.